Welcome back, beautiful people. We have another episode of An Untold Narrative. This is episode 74 with the brilliant mind that is Sean Williams, who has been in footwear, in sneakers, in culture for longer than most people even called it sneaker culture or streetwear. Him and a partner, D Wells, who has been formerly on this podcast, you can look up that episode later on, have been doing platforms like Social Studies for a very long time. You have been featured on Time. You have been featured across the Brooklyn Museum. You've been featured in pretty much every sneaker magazine over the years. You've have every accolade, from being part of Pencil Academy to a number of different things. Let's start with, how do you introduce yourself? Because your resume it's like a CVS receipt.
Dave, what's up? Welcome to everyone listening and viewing. I'm Sean Paper Chaser Williams of OSD. I usually go by now consultant, teacher, curator.
Okay.
And those are the three that are usually, like, those are the DNA of everything that D and I have done with Obsessive Sneaker Disorder kind of since the beginning. When we created the first sneaker podcast in 2007, people were telling us that, like, even an example of us being here today, no one's going to ever listen to you guys talk about sneakers. And, that harebrained idea that D had that turned into what opened and ushered in a multi-million-dollar industry was something that, when we did it in 2007, we're already, between the both of us, thousands of pairs of sneakers deep, and really frustrated in the year 2007 with the Air Force One 25th anniversary. And our original logo was actually the bottom of the Air Force Ones with OSD etched in the tread pattern as like a signifier of that year when we came out. We've since changed the logo since then. But when we started the show, it was really out of giving a voice to the voiceless. And for us feeling entitled, if you will, for lack of a better way to say it, after years of spending hundreds upon thousands of dollars on sneakers collectively between the both of us, and then the extended crew that came along, we felt like it was our right to finally come and speak out and say what we wanted to say to every company in the industry and every person who we felt was not taking care of the culture and of sneaker culture and of the phenomenon of loving sneakers in that way properly. So we started the show, and 2 years in, we also started what was called OSD TV. So it was the first 24/7 digital streaming network of sneaker content. So this is years before here we are now. People weren't ready for it, though, because it required you to sit down at a computer and watch. Nothing was mobile. There was no portability to it. You had to literally sit down and watch at your computer, which people just honestly, just like the podcast 2 years before, they didn't think was possible or were they ready for. So still rolling along, getting consultant gigs at a lot of brands, working with Dwayne while he was still at Nike and Jordan, doing things like Future Soul competition and getting calls from folks at Adidas and other places to do consulting work. We started hearing that people were watching and listening to our show just to figure out how to do their jobs. People at the brands, right? That's crazy, right?
That is bizarre.
So, yeah, so we realized that through the consulting experiences, there was a problem with the fact that everywhere we're going and being paid to help these brands out, there's no one that looks like us, and there aren't any women. And at the same time, maybe a year prior, Dwayne Edwards had already come to the conclusion that something needed to be done on his end. And we were reaching a similar point where we were like, okay, the problems that need to be solved here, where more people that look like us and more women will get into this industry, are access and education. Like, there's literally nobody teaching sneaker business and culture anywhere. So 2010, Pensole Footwear Design Academy starts in Portland, Oregon. 2011, we take the business and the culture side and we start social studies. So we sort of took care of the kids who were artistic and could design and could draw, and Pensole Footwear Design Academy took care of them. And then we did all the kids who can't draw but had transferable skills and an interest in getting into the sneaker industry, and we took care of those kids. So here we are, 11th year of doing social studies as a result of all of that, which the beginning, the DNA is the OSD talk show. And now here we are at the point where Pensole Lewis College of Business and Design now exists and opened its doors May 2nd, 2022 as the first design HBCU. And we're still pushing along doing what we're going to do. We have some things that we're going to develop and grow into for early next year. But just to show you that, again, I say that I'm here with you talking about this journey in the podcast format, which we started in 2007, which was the kind of thing that just shows the evolution of expression and content creation and these discussions that people used to have in these small siloed places about sneaker culture and fashion. And we're here being able to share that on a broader level. So I'm happy to be here doing that.
Yeah, what a wild journey. So you've definitely been at it longer than I've been in the footwear industry. And you're still plugging away. One word that you used was relevancy. And so doing this for so long, how have you managed to stay so relevant? Like, is that something you think about? I personally do, right? Like, I was actually this past weekend at ComplexCon, and I was talking to a friend about, like, how important being relevant is in the day and age of, social and everything so transparent. You talked about how now everybody's got a podcast, and like we were doing it like way back when nobody was doing a podcast. How important is relevancy? Is that something you think about?
I'm going to flip that word for you so that it becomes less of a burdensome word for you. This is not about relevancy, it's about legacy. All right. So when I had kids, my oldest daughter is 23 years old. My son is about to be 21.
Okay.
Anyone that's in the shoes, when you reach a certain age and you start buying for your kids, that's when you start paying attention to your legacy. Because as someone who's into shoes, and I've owned 4,000 pairs in this lifetime, I don't have 4,000 pairs now, but that's over the span of 37 plus years, 4,000 pairs of shoes. When you have children, now there's this rite of passage that you want to pass to your kids, right? You want them to be into it now. My daughter's first pair of shoes was a Laney 14. You know what I'm saying?
I don't even know what those
How
are.
crazy is that? Air Jordan Laney 14s.
Okay. That's why that was her
that was
first
her
pair.
first shoe.
That was her first pair of sneakers, was Jordan 14s.
Yeah, her first pair of sneakers, because that was the year she was born when they
Okay.
came out. And my son's walking shoes were white on white Air Forces. Right? So here's what's crazy, right? You start thinking about when you start going to shop for them, everything on the wall for them were shoes that I had when I was a kid, for the most part. Very little was new.
Mm-hmm.
So then I started thinking about it in that way where I was like, if they have children and they do the same thing with them and they take them shopping, are these same shoes going to be here on the wall? Are these going to be the same choices that they have now 2 generations later? And it
Wow.
bothered me. It bothers
Wow.
D. So this is about legacy of being able to empower the younger generation of folks to get in and shake this shit up. That's what they need to do, right? But again, it was about the access and the education and the empowerment. There's nobody on the planet doing what we do. So we took the personal accountability to finally take those steps to educate people. We've taught students in 8 different countries around the world through social studies. Our oldest student was 62 years old. We have people who work for brands and come back and say, you know what, I'm working for this brand, but I'm still feeling like I'm missing something. When's your next class? We've had brands call us and say, how about you fly out, come to headquarters and do some, inspirational team building, blah, blah, blah with us. And there's so many different ways that we've had opportunities to do just that in terms of building legacy and making sure that the younger people have, number one, they're inspired. Number two, they're educated. And number three, they're empowered to keep pushing into the industry.
Right.
That's what this is all about. That is what all of this is really all about. It's the relevancy. I could care less. I really could care less, because there's no sneaker brand currently making sneakers for anyone over 30 unless it's Skechers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess at a certain age threshold, what does the word relevant mean, right? Is it 6 months? Is it a week? Is it years? And to your point, clearly the relevancy is just this ingrained, especially on sneaker silhouettes. It's an ingrained thing that's just happened year over year, different colorways, different material layouts on the same silhouettes. So are those even relevant anymore, or are they just forced because it's the only thing offered? And that thought process that you have around breaking that down and pushing the limits of like educating is really fascinating. Of like, it's making me think now of like, is anybody doing a good enough job educating as to like why these products exist, and how do we change that narrative in the future? Like, are there opportunities for new product and new different stories to be told, or is it going to be the same year over year, decade after decade?
Dave, let me tell you, when I took my son to Foot Locker for the first time, and when he was of age to consciously look at the wall for himself and point at shoes and pick shoes, that was when it bothered me, like really hit home. I was like, yo, there's nothing up here right now that he can point to that is his own, that he likes, that he would like, that I would be like, wow, I wish that sneaker existed when I was his age. There was nothing on the wall that said that made that statement. And that was when I realized, and D as well, who has a daughter similar in age to my oldest. It was like, yo, what are these companies doing if they're not letting people in to shake things up and do something different? Now, there's a culture clash there, because retros at a lot of companies are making all the money. But then there are companies that are doing things new, that their shoes are speaking to a certain customer that isn't that customer, right? So you have companies like On Running, who is an exciting new brand in their space. You have independent brands who are doing their thing in their space. But there's no collective general population adaptation of their newness. It's still everybody fussing over a sneaker that came out in 1985, right? So it's crazy, right? So
So
how do we convince that person to broaden their scope and spectrum to accept something that came out of the true genesis and passion of originality? How do we inspire them to accept that?
So have you come up with that answer yet, or is that something you're working through today?
That's why social studies exists. We're still working through that today, right? That is exactly why social studies exists, is because, again, with respect to all the different design programs out there, you know, design is taught a certain way. Like, you have to teach design and mentorship and everything in design a certain way because it's design. But when you start talking about the business and the culture, there's nuances and dynamics and different scenarios to that have to be taken into account all over the world. You know, you have certain things that represent in design. A running shoe is this shape, a basketball shoe is this shape, a lifestyle shoe is this shape. But when you start talking about culture and you start talking about why in New Orleans the popular sneaker here is a Reebok Classic, but the popular sneaker in Philly is a New Balance 990, or in DC, Maryland, Virginia area. But in New York, the popular sneaker is an Air Force One. But in Cali, it's a Cortez. Those are things nobody teaches. And
Mm.
those are some of the most critical things that some of our young people need to understand, the dynamics of why those things are what they are, right? So, in Boston, same thing. Sure, you have all these different cities around the world that adopted footwear in ways that speak in different scenarios and situations, right? Like, I remember at one point in the UK, the Nike Air Stab was banned. Nike had to stop selling the Air Stab in the UK
Mm.
because most fatalities in the UK happen by knives, not by guns, right? So there was a group of people who kind of protested, and Nike kind of knocked and shook the tree on Nike a little bit, and Nike totally pulled the Air Stab out of the UK, right? Who teaches about that and why that happens, right? Or
I
how
didn't
about
e-
in Australia, where
I didn't even know that was a thing.
was that?
I didn't even know that was a
Yeah,
thing.
it really happened. Yep, really happened, right? How about in Australia, where the Nike Shocks back then, like the R4s and all of them, that was the official dope boy shoe. Who would have thought, right? Or here's one that I found out about recently, a couple of years ago during the pandemic, that blew my mind, right? There's a sneaker that is worn in areas where the Taliban reign. The shoe is called the cheetah. And all the people know just by looking at whoever's wearing the cheetahs that they're associated with the Taliban. Don't play with them.
Wow.
Crazy, right?
Crazy. So
So who teaches that?
what do you what's like the greatest, so when you do teach these things, right, and you're giving me an education lesson and hopefully everybody else listening right now, right, like there's a lot to respond and react to when somebody goes through the social studies course and they do get impacted by all of these stories and this information that you just shared with us, plus a lot more. What is their main takeaway? What do they take away on a granular level and apply it to their individual lives or into their career paths? Like what is the greatest thing that somebody can exit out of the course with from your perspective?
Is a personal, and then there's an academic, right? The
Okay.
personal is, I want you to never see sneakers the same ever again. Like, you're gonna leave not seeing sneakers the same ever again. That
Okay.
is like surface level personally, like, man, I just shit is just different.
I love that.
But then on that secondary level, we want you to foster and see a degree of entrepreneurship in yourself. Like, if there was a business that you wanted to start that you might see as having potential in this space, create it, or at least research it to see if it's something you should do. And we help with that. And then on the third level is, not everybody's built for entrepreneurship, but people want to get in. So we teach them about all the jobs that exist in the industry on the corporate side of shoes that don't involve being artistic. All the transferables too. There's folks who have been in finance that have transferred into sneakers. Legal, we all know the legal aspect, right? The community relations. Like, there's so many different levels of positions and access on the corporate side that no one ever took the time to tell people that they could get into. And that's where we are. That's the space that we occupy with the social studies experience. I've had
Wow.
people who have been into like taxation and finance and say, yo, I hate this shit. I hate being told that in order to make it in this segment, I have to work for these three firms. And I'm like, well, sneaker companies need accountants. you
Facts.
know, like, so,
So what
we have to be those people to draw that dotted line for them. And we've done that for 11 years now. There are over 100 people who have come through social studies that now work in the sneaker industry.
That's amazing. So like oh my God, I have so much to react to. What is what is the greatest impact, like impactful story that you've heard, or an individual that has come out of it and who's like changed their life? Is there one that stands out for you that you'd be willing to share with everybody? Because these stories get me jazzed up, right? Because to me, there's a fundamental conversation to be had about, we live in 2022 or going into 23, and the internet specifically allows us to stop making excuses. And if you have a passion of something that you want to do, there's a million ways to go about actually pursuing your passion while still bringing what you're core good at, right? Like what you're educated in, and applying that to something that you're really passionate about. And it sounds like you're offering that bridge in a really new light through this education platform. I get jazzed up about hearing these really authentic stories because it just proves my point that there is no excuse, right? So is there a story that comes to mind for you that like you'd be willing to share that'll just like blow people's brains away?
So this one has a lot to do with, this is a recent social studies alumni.
Okay.
She a couple of years ago. So in 2018 to 2019, I was ranking scholar at Drexel University teaching the social studies program. And it was at the Westfall College of Media Arts and Fashion Design, their college there in Philly. And there was a young lady who was already in a graduate level of studies. Her name is Chandrika Carr. Chandrika had been told for the previous 5 years of being there as a successful apparel and accessories designer who had a passion for sneakers, that she should just not consider sneakers. Like, leave it alone. Like, why do you keep talking about sneakers? You're good with apparel and accessories. Just go there. Stop thinking about sneakers. Here I come in 2018-19 with social studies. Shout out to Joe Hancock, who's the main reason why I ended up at Drexel. I'm still working with them today. Chandrika takes social studies while I'm there. And afterwards, I continue to mentor her. And in 2020, there was a Philly version of Pensole and Foot Locker doing a Puma Hacked competition. And at that Puma Hacked competition, Chandrika wasn't going to go. She's like, there's going to be a whole lot of people there who are more talented than me in footwear design and whatnot. And I said, you better get your ass down there and go. I don't care who's in that room. You need to be there. She went. She won. So in 2021, her shoe finally came out from Puma, her winning design, sold at the Philly Community Store, 150 pairs. Her first couple of days, she sells out half. And then a week later, she gets an offer to go and work at Adidas in the Seed program, a role which she accepted. So she went and put out a shoe with Puma, and a week later gets a job with Adidas. And most recently, she was on the design team that recently, the Seed program team, worked with Ruth Carter on uniforms and costume work for Wakanda Forever.
Wow.
So she's one of the people on the team who just worked on Wakanda Forever.
Well, I have complete chills in my entire body leading up to the back of my bald ass head. That was wild. I'm seriously like blown. I mean, that's not what I expected when I asked the question. I knew there was going to be something powerful, but you see how these bricks stack and how the push forward can compound, and you just can't give up, because look how close she was to giving up. And then you provide this spark to just ignite and fuel and push forward. And that's amazing. That's like really, isn't it unfortunate that those situations happen, and so many kids, or not even kids, like anybody in their career, like you can switch careers at 45 or like 80 or whatever you want to do these days. Isn't it amazing how like they were so close to just giving up and focusing and not going into sneakers? And like, how do we change the narrative for everybody, right? Let alone just sneakers, right? Like, how do we get people out of the box of life and just to like really go out there and experience something they're passionate about?
Sneakers have represented the ultimate icebreaker for me, David. I have sneakers in my closet from countries I haven't been to yet because of people that I've met and talked to and develop a friendship with through sneakers. And to your point, the largest story in that is she had somebody in her corner that said, "You better get down there and show them what you got."
Right.
And look at where it has taken her, right? After being 5 years at Drexel University with a bunch of people who were telling her in the traditional box, don't go for that. That's not for you. And now look at her, right? And that's something to be taken from that situation in a bunch of other situations where people are being told you don't need to do that. Even us. No one's going to listen to you guys sit around and talk about sneakers. People
Yeah.
literally like said that to us. Like, who is going to listen to you guys talk about sneakers? That is the stupidest thing I've heard.
Right.
Right. And now look at this journey 15 years later. And the things that we've done, that some of which worked, some of which didn't. Being an early adopter on a lot of things is tiring, but if it's adaptation for you as opposed to you adapting for everyone else, then you stick with it and it works. Like now there's Netflix, Hulu, and everybody else and streaming platforms where we're now considering bringing OSTV back on Roku TV now as our own on-demand network. So 2009 to 2022, it takes some time. Being early is tiring, but we don't regret that in any way, simply because we knew why we were doing this to begin with. There's a lot of sneaker talk show that have come and go and gone only because they wanted to do a podcast so that they can get Nike and Jordan and Adidas to notice them and send free shoes.
Right.
I've literally heard people say, like, we only do this so that we can get noticed and get free shoes. Like, there's another way to do that where you don't have to dedicate an hour of your time or two to doing a podcast that they're never going to listen to.
Mm.
So, it really is all about the passion and the motivation behind why you do what you do. Chandrika stayed with it because she knew that that passion was never going to go away. And if she didn't pursue it, she'd regret it. Sitting at somebody's company doing apparel or accessories going, why am I here? And that may have totally spun her off her access and got her into something totally off what her purpose was. She just finished working with Ruth Carter, who's one of the biggest and most esteemed costume designers in Hollywood. Her and her C team just finished working on Wakanda Forever. Like, fast forward or rewind rather back to 2018 before she met me, where she was being told, leave it alone.
Right.
Forget sneakers.
Right. So you've
So
been
that situation exists for all of us.
you've been able to have this really incredible path where you've been at the unicorn brands, you've consulted, you obviously have a relationship with Pencil School of Design. Footwear design was like obviously a trendsetter in its own. You've met all these incredible
Yep.
people. You have this Rolodex of relationships. What keeps you motivated to keep kind of brainstorming new ideas and pushing the limits? Is it those stories, or is there a greater purpose for you of why you keep plugging away and waking up every single day and trying to is it to inspire more people? Is it to break people out of the box? Like what gets you going anywhere? Because you've done it all essentially, right? Like you guys had a museum in New York. Like like you guys have done a lot in your careers. So like what keeps you going every single day?
The first piece is I've always, D and I talk about this all the time. There's a story in every box of sneakers, right? And that's what keeps us interested, right? The second piece is we're not doing this for us. We're not doing it for us. The things that we do are outside of ourselves, because we know that there's an army of people younger than us with the skills in all facets, creatively, intellectually, in specialized skill sets. There's kids all over this world, people, not just kids, because again, my oldest student was 62 years old. There are people all over this planet who love shoes who should have every opportunity to get into this game however they can, right? Be it their own business, be it working for somebody and learning on somebody else's dime before they go off and do it on their own. Being able to take emerging technology and use it to their advantage, right? Like someone has to be the one to tell them that that is possible. And if we don't do it, we honestly feel like if we don't do that, no one else is doing
Mm.
it. And that's cynical to that's cynical to say, but it is our hope that in all of the people that we've taught over the last 11 years, there's somebody who is ready to jump ahead of us and continue to do that work. Like at the moment, there are a few people we see who want to do that, but we're not done yet.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. There's this sense of, and I've had a lot of amazing and beautiful conversations throughout the years that I've done this podcast, and there is this theme, you know, in my opinion, of the greatest of the greats who do things out of service to others rather than for themselves, right? It's definitely like a core theme that I've extracted from all of these conversations. And you've pretty much just said the same exact thing. It's not about you and it's not about D. It's about, you know, offering this service to change somebody's life and give them the same opportunity as anybody else, regardless of where they're from. And there is something amazing and special about that. And so my thought is, and I know the answer, but we won't reveal it. But like, is there anything that you can talk or share about, you know, what is the future for Sean look like, right? Like I ask a lot of people who come on this podcast if they have a 5-year plan, which is something that I personally just don't believe in anymore. I think the world moves too fast, right? Like I just think that life will slap you upside the head if you have a 5-year plan. But like, how far in advance do you think, or do you strategize against as to like what is the future of Sean's life look like?
So since 2020, with the receptors at a lot of different organizations and companies around the world being more in tune with social justice, we have a plan to do things that we're doing globally and in a broader sense with colleges and universities and these, you know, brands of all kinds. We want to shift to a more community focused approach. So being able to get to kids where they are, being able to have a dedicated, really spot to get to us so that we can help people as opposed to us being the traveling salesman.
Mm,
So the goal is, and it will hopefully happen soon, is to be more centrally based and community focused. I mean, like on a real hyper local level where anyone who wants access to everything we have to offer will be able to find us in a spot that's dedicated to them.
wow, that's beautiful. And definitely I love that, right? Like it seems like there's more, or if brands aren't thinking about it, or if people aren't thinking about the core communities around them, you know, that can make or break somebody's life, you know, what, you know, the people you surround yourself with and how much they elevate you or bring you down. And so I definitely think there's something special about that. Completely a little bit off topic. I had to ask this question because I just didn't know the answer to it. Um,
Yeah.
why the quotes around paper chaser for you in your title and what you go by and how you introduce yourself? Where does that streamline from?
So that nickname came to me because ever since I was in my teen years, I've always been the friend who people come to with their ideas. And it was never the usual, is this a good idea or a bad idea? I was always the friend who, when they came to me with an idea, whether it was good or bad, I was the one who had the foresight to see how they could potentially monetize it.
Mm.
So whether I thought the idea was good or not, I was the only friend a lot of people had who would objectively say to them, well, I don't know if I would do it, but you could make money off it if you did this. Or
Mm.
this would be big if you approach these people to do that. Like even today, I'm that person who people come to me with an idea. They're looking for just some kind of affirmation that what they came up with is a good idea. And, I honestly think with as many things that people sell in this world and offer as product and services, there are no bad ideas. You just need to find someone who's willing to, be your consumer, your supporter, your customer. So I've always had that mindset when people approached me with anything that, they wanted that confirmation or affirmation about. So that's where Paper Chaser came from, is because I was the guy who everyone knew that thought in that lane.
I think that's amazing. That is not what I imagined the answer to be. So I appreciate you sharing that. And it's amazing that you offer or are willing to offer advice to anybody, regardless of kind of what the scope is. Like you said, it regardless if you agree or disagree with the idea. But here's kind of how you can look at it in order to maximize the idea, regardless of what I personally believe. I think a lot of times people don't look at the other side of the coin, and they think that everybody or their friends or their relationships have to agree with them, but rather it's okay to offer a different perspective on something to just really help push somebody over the edge to either continue it or look at it differently. So there's something special in that as well. Sean, I got a couple more questions for you. The
Yeah,
first
let's
is
go.
something the first is something that I've been asking a lot of people recently. Every so often, I change the framework of the last two questions on this podcast. This one I've been doing, and I get a lot of joy from it, and I hope it brings people a lot of value too. Is I've been on this high around giving people their flowers while they're alive. And so I want to ask you if there's one, two, three, seven people that come to mind in thinking about giving them their flowers, or somebody you want to just say thanks to, or just offer value, or even just shout out and have people go follow if they're interested. Who comes to mind and when you hear the term somebody that you want to give flowers to?
I'm going to answer this question in a broader sense, only because of my passion for where things are going. Again, I'm really all about where sneakers and technology can go. And if I limit this shout out to just a person, it won't go any further in what my passion and desire is. I think people should really dig into what's happening with sneakers and Web3 technology. Like, I want people to investigate everybody, the Nike and Artifact, the Adidas, the everybody. Like, I need people who are into shoes to look at all the examples where Web3 technology is being used to change the sneaker experience for the greater good of everyone, right? I could say one person, but then the minute I say one person or one company, yeah, I don't like that shit. Nah, screw this. And it's not going to keep people's minds open to what's actually happening with this amazing technology that could literally democratize, revolutionize, and enhance and improve the sneaker industry. So, like, I want people to really take that time to invest in themselves,
Mm.
being educated on Web3 technology and what it means for us. Like, flowers to you who are going to watch this and listen to this. And please take my advice and dig into what's happening with Web3 technology. Help yourself get in the know and knowledgeable about this, as opposed to the surface level hype and fear mongering you have behind FTX and Board Ape Yacht Club and all. Like, get past all of that and really have a real investigation session with yourself about what's really happening with the wonders of Web3 technology and how it can work for you. That's my flowers to everyone who wants to do that.
I love, I mean, again, not with the answer I was expecting, but I love that. You know that I love that. I'm wildly biased. I work for a Web3 company. So
Yeah.
I think it's something that I'm really passionate about. Regardless of how you feel about it, again, it's looking at the other side of the coin. Again, it's even if you disagree, you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not going to be willing to spend the time to educate yourself on it. Right. So
Right.
I think that is a beautiful thing and a great piece of advice for anybody listening. Sean, where can people, this has been amazing. Where can people find you? Is there a website? Is there a social handle, multiple social handles? What's the best way to reach out to you if they want to send you a DM, just chop it up about sneakers? How can people find you?
Best way to find me are my preferred levels of contact where I respond rather rapidly are on Instagram at OSD underscore paper chaser, PAPERCHASR, which there's a story behind the spelling there, but that'll be a part two. um, find me there, Instagram. I respond to DMs and all quick there. And also on LinkedIn, Sean Williams. That's another place I'm very fond of conversations and discourse and interacting and connecting with people. Those two are the best places to find me and reach out to me. And when you reach out to me through either of those, I know you're serious about a conversation besides trying to pay me to boost my Instagram followers for a blue check.
That's a beautiful way to wrap it up. Go follow Sean. He's got an incredible story, longer than what we were able to capture here. We will have a part two eventually. Hopefully, Sean, we'd love to have you back as you develop the future into 2023. This has been amazing. Episode 74 of An Untold Narrative. Thanks for rocking with us today. Appreciate you a lot, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you, David. This was awesome, man. To be continued, bro. Appreciate all the good work you're doing. I know your best is yet to come, bro.